The 2026 Formula One season has just started in Australia, and already one car is confusing the entire paddock. Not because it dominated. Not because it topped the timing screens. But because when the Red Bull Ford RB22 works, it looks unbelievably fast. And when it doesn't, it looks completely unpredictable. That contradiction is exactly what shocked engineers during the first day of running at the Australian Grand Prix. Because in the middle of a chaotic Friday for Red Bull, something very strange appeared in the data. Short bursts of acceleration that looked incredibly powerful. Moments where the RB22 suddenly gained huge speed on corner exit, even while the rest of the lap looked messy. Which raises a very serious question. Did Red Bull hide something inside the RB22 that other teams simply cannot copy? Remember, this is not a normal Red Bull car. This is the first machine built around the brand new Red Bull Ford power unit. A completely new engine. A completely new hybrid system. And an entirely new philosophy for managing energy under the 2026 regulations. But the first day in Melbourne was anything but smooth. Max Verstappen's car suddenly stopped at the pit lane exit. He lost more than 20 minutes of the session. Then the RB22 snapped violently through a fast corner and went off into the gravel, damaging the floor. And yet, even after all that chaos, Verstappen still finished the session less than 7/10 away from the fastest lap. Which tells engineers something very important. The RB22 might not be easy to drive. It might not be stable yet. But hidden inside the car, there could be a level of performance that becomes extremely dangerous once Red Bull unlocks it. And if what some analysts believe about the new Ford power unit is true, then the rest of the grid may soon discover that Red Bull has built something very different for 2026. What makes this even more fascinating is how the RB22 revealed its potential. Because the first practice session of a new Formula One season is normally controlled. Teams are careful. Engine modes stay conservative. Fuel loads are heavy. Most engineers are simply checking that everything works after months of development. But in Melbourne today, Red Bull's situation looked very different. At first, the RB22 appeared competitive but not dominant. Ferrari immediately looked comfortable. Leclerc placed the SF26 at the top of the session. Hamilton was right behind him. And Max Verstappen finished third. Close enough to stay in the fight, but clearly not the fastest car on track. That result alone already hinted at something unusual. Because during the dominant Red Bull seasons of the past, the car usually arrived at the first race looking almost untouchable. But today, the RB22 looked human. Competitive. But not overwhelming. And that actually matches what Verstappen had already said before the weekend began. He openly admitted that Red Bull might not have the fastest car at the start of the 2026 season. He even suggested that Ferrari and Mercedes could begin the year with a small advantage. That kind of honesty is rare in Formula One. Especially from a team used to controlling the championship. But the reason for that caution lies deep inside the design of the RB22. Because this car represents one of the biggest technical transitions in Red Bull's history. For the first time, the team is running its own power unit project together with Ford. A completely new engine. A completely new hybrid system. And a completely new approach to how the car manages electrical energy under the 2026 regulations. Those regulations changed the balance of performance dramatically. Electrical deployment now plays a much larger role. Energy recovery becomes critical. And aerodynamic efficiency matters more than ever, because drag directly affects how the hybrid system performs across a lap. Red Bull's solution was to design an extremely compact and efficient car. The RB22 uses aggressive packaging around the side pods. Very tight bodywork. And complex aerodynamic surfaces around the front suspension and air inlets to protect airflow heading toward the floor. The goal is simple. Clean airflow. Less drag. Maximum aerodynamic efficiency. But concepts like this often come with a cost. They require extremely precise setup. Small changes in ride height. small changes in airflow. Even minor setup mistakes can make the car unstable. And that instability appeared briefly during the second practice session. When Verstappen pushed the car near the limit, the rear suddenly snapped. The RB22 slid violently across the grass and gravel, throwing pieces of the floor into the air as it bounced through the runoff area. The damage underneath the car immediately ended any serious data collection for the rest of the session. From the outside, it looked like a disaster. But engineers studying the lap data noticed something very interesting. Even in a broken session, even with limited running, the RB22 still produced competitive lap times, which suggests something very important about the car. The performance is there. The challenge is controlling it. And that is exactly why some analysts believe Red Bull may still be hiding one of the most powerful elements of the RB22. Not an aerodynamic trick, not a mechanical innovation, but something far more important in the 2026 era: energy deployment. Because under the new regulations, the way a car releases electrical power across the lap can completely change its competitiveness. And according to several technical reports, the Red Bull Ford power unit may already have a very aggressive energy mapping system designed for short acceleration bursts. If that system works exactly as intended, the RB22 could become extremely fast on corner exit. Which might explain why, even on a chaotic Friday in Australia, Verstappen's lap times remain surprisingly competitive. And that raises the most interesting question after the first day of the 2026 season. Did Red Bull struggle today? Or did they simply reveal the first hints of a car that could become much faster once the team unlocks its full potential? But this is where the RB22 story becomes even more complicated. Because when engineers looked deeper into the data from Friday, they noticed something that did not match the final result on the timing screens. The Red Bull was not consistently fast. But in certain moments, it was extremely fast. Especially in the first phase of acceleration after slow corners. That detail matters a lot in the 2026 era. Because the new regulations changed the balance between aerodynamic drag and electrical deployment. Cars now rely heavily on how efficiently they release hybrid energy. If the deployment is too aggressive, the battery drains too quickly. If it is too conservative, the car loses time on the straights. The entire lap becomes a delicate balance between energy recovery and energy release. And this is exactly where the Red Bull Ford project may have focused most of its development. According to several technical analyses, the RB22 is using a very specific engine mapping designed to deliver extremely strong torque early in the acceleration phase. In simple terms, when the driver exits a slow corner and touches the throttle, the system delivers a short burst of hybrid power combined with turbo response. That burst launches the car forward earlier than expected, which can give the driver a small but very important advantage. A few meters gained at the beginning of a straight. But in Formula 1, those few meters can turn into several tenths of a second by the end of the lap. That is why engineers studying the telemetry from Melbourne noticed something unusual. Even though the RB22 struggled with stability, even though Verstappen lost valuable running time, the car still produced very strong sector times in certain parts of the circuit. Moments where the acceleration looked incredibly sharp. That kind of performance usually indicates a very aggressive power delivery strategy. And if Red Bull truly has developed a hybrid deployment system optimized for corner exits, it could become a serious weapon during races. Especially on tracks like Albert Park. Because Melbourne is a circuit where traction and acceleration decide everything. Most corners lead directly into short straights. Drivers brake hard, rotate the car quickly, and then launch toward the next section. A car that accelerates slightly earlier out of those corners gains speed across the entire straight. But there is a downside to such an aggressive system. It can make the car harder to drive. If the torque delivery arrives too suddenly, the rear tires can lose grip. The driver may experience snap oversteer. Which is exactly what seemed to happen during Verstappen's off-track moment in the second practice session. The rear stepped out violently. The car slid through the grass and gravel. and the floor suffered significant damage underneath. That incident may actually reveal something important about the RB22. The car might have enormous potential, but its operating window could be extremely narrow. Meaning the setup must be perfect. The ride height must be correct. The energy deployment must be balanced.